I want to start by introducing you to my nephew, Tanner. Tanner is a child who was born completely deaf, and he just started his first year at school. More than anything, Tanner's family wishes that he has the educational opportunities to show the world what they already know, that his bright mind sparkles inside his silent universe. The classroom is made for people who consume information in a traditional way, and Tanner would benefit from having consumable content for his classes. I'm here to tell you about an application that does exactly that, an application that brings peace of mind to students with disabilities and their families. Tanner's family is proud knowing that despite not being able to hear as his peers do, he's able to pursue his dreams just as they are. My name is Selena Gabriel. I'm a recent graduate from the computer science program at the University of Windsor, and I'm the founder of Aida Note. Joining me today is my Chief Technology Officer, Steven, and he'll jump in just a little bit later on. But Aida Note is a distributed speech-to-text platform that provides real-time transcription to the audience of any speaker. Let me break that down for you. Imagine any speaker audience setting. Give the speaker a microphone. As they talk, their voice gets sent over to an API that transforms their voice into text that is sent down to our servers and distributed among students registered in the course, who then have options to highlight and take notes on the transcribed text. You know, I first tried to hack this tool together last year at a hackathon for 3 days, and there wasn't enough time, but when I saw an opportunity to start this venture at the epicenter, I jumped at it. And thus, Articulus was born. This was our first BMC, and as you can see, it's not very full. Not having a business background meant that I really didn't know what I was looking at, but I knew this was the template being used at the accelerator, so I wanted to have an initial concept. The first thing that I realized was that Articulus was a name of a company just north of the border. But I'd done my research, and I saw that Blackboard had an API that I could interface my application with. So I wanted to become a Blackboard partner and sell my product to higher education institutions. After consulting with my mentors, I realized that selling to institutions would come with a lot of red tape, so I'd probably have to think of another way to get this in the hands of my users. And this was the beginning of the first major pivot towards selling to students and focusing on accessibility. So I went out and did some research. I interviewed 26 students at the University of Windsor, and I hypothesized that there was a pain in the information gathering in the classroom, and I wanted to prove that it was a big enough pain that students would pay for it. When I interviewed the students, what I found was 65% of them said that when they struggled in the classroom, it was due to auditory issues. And the answers ranged from the teacher speaking too quickly to the room being too big and the teacher speaking too softly. I also found that they were paying between $10 to $30 a month on services as it stands. And a lot of them included educational services such as SOS, Chegg, or Laracast. So this proved my hypothesis. If the pain was big enough, the students would pay for it. But I wanted to narrow my focus even further, so I looked at the Federal Disability Report for statistics on education and disabilities. I found that 1 in 5 Canadians report having a disability, and Stats Canada says that 14% of them will receive higher education. So of those Canadians, 30% report taking a lighter course load or completely discontinuing their studies altogether. And what I also found was 80% use an assistive aid device or technology, which was really great news for me. Now that I knew that I had a customer segment, I needed to figure out how I was going to get it in their hands. So the first thing I did was I spoke to student accessibility services on campus, and I partnered with them. And then the next thing I did was I emailed all student accessibility services across Ontario. I received a 100% response rate. 21 universities responded with information regarding their note-taker program. And what I found was they weren't always meeting their client needs. They had a volunteer rate of about 60 to 80%, which is a big enough gap when you're a student with a disability who doesn't have a note-taker come forward for classes. Some universities were even paying $250 for a note-taker per course. And they were able to do that using something called the Bursary for Students with Disabilities. The BSWD is a government grant allocated to students with disabilities to spend on educational tools to better facilitate their learning. So I received a letter of interest from the University of Windsor confirming their recommendation of my product to their clientele. Now that I had a customer segment and I'd identified how I could get it to them through a channel, I wanted to make sure that this was a viable market. 1 in 5 Canadians totals 6,200,000 Canadians. And Sensibility market experts estimate their buying power at $55.4 billion annually. And when you look at that at a global scale, it becomes even bigger. But let's crunch the numbers in Canada first. If there's 6,200,000 Canadians and 14% receive higher education, subtract the 30% that discontinue their studies and the remaining 80% that use an assistive aid device or technology, keeping fractions the same, they have an estimated buying power of $4.34 billion a year. And if I can capture just 1% of that market, that's $43.4 million that I'm looking at. Now that I figured out my customer segments, my channels, and that I knew it was a viable market, I started crunching some numbers, and I realized that if I was going to charge students a monthly fee, I wouldn't always break even because the cost of my product is dependent on the use of Google Cloud Platform. So I've come up with a new pricing strategy that charges users on a per-course basis. And this was validated through emailing student accessibility services and finding out just how much they would pay student note takers. Aida Note is not just a cut and dry speech-to-text tool. It's not one-to-one with Siri or Alexa. It's done in a distributed way, and we're one of the only companies in the market that does that. We also focus on accessibility and note-taking features. We're actually holding a focus group in the next 30 days to validate which features are most important to the highest need students at Student Accessibility Services. And we're also going to be filling the gap in student note takers so that we have maximum value added by the accessibility centers, including ourselves. Stephen is now going to give a quick demo of how Aida Note works.
So while Selena tries to figure this out, I will explain exactly what we were about to do, and maybe it'll show up in a second. So my speech is actually being translated right now using our distributed speech-to-text demo. We have a platform up. If you go to demo.aidanote.com, you can test it. In one click of a button, you can start your live transcription for your own presentation. That's our demo service that we've come up with. Any audience member, after you start a session, can view your session. They will type in your session code. They'll be able to view the live transcriptions as they're happening, or they can go to the session afterwards and view it. I don't know. Oh, there we go. Some things are happening. Good. So aside from some technical difficulties, there we go. This scalable minimum viable product was built for less than $500, and currently it costs us $5 a month to maintain. I'm going to pass this back off to Selena right now, because we might be running a little short on time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. So right now, Aida Note is very much a demo product, so if you do go visit our site, there will be some broken links, just bear in mind. But let's wrap this up. So there's a couple of things that we've already covered. Our customer segments are students with disabilities, and they're going to buy Aida Note because it's a distributed solution that focuses on accessible note-taking features. And our channels and key partners is Student Accessibility Services, and this has been validated through a letter of interest. Our revenue streams are using the BSWD, charging on a per course basis, and our cost structure consists of 3 different departments, the first one being Google Cloud Platform, the second one being paying our developers, and the third being marketing. In order for this business to be successful, we need to be doing software development, and in order to do that, we need software developers and a platform to do it on. I want you all to try and remember what it was like in your first year of university. Remember the stress and the fear of falling behind, and then try to imagine that experience through the lens of a student with a disability. We are Aida Note. We are bringing peace of mind to students with disabilities, and we'd like to thank you for listening to our presentation.
So have you guys had any success in interacting with the LMS, so Blackboard, or is that something that you're not going to consider at all? Because just hear me out, if a student is getting announcements, notes, resources through Blackboard, it seems like the logical solution in integrating into Blackboard.
Yeah, I agree, and that was our initial concept, but just through the advice of our mentors, it was just said that selling at an institutional level would come with a lot of red tape, and we'd be looking at approximately 5 years before we would even see it being used by any users. So it was something, that was why we had to pivot, but it is still in the back of our minds. If this creates enough buzz where students are using it enough, we hope that Blackboard would approach us and we could talk about being partners at that point.
And just further that, to engage as a student in using this tool, I'd have to, one, be aware of it, know that it exists, and then go on to a third party, your website, and the instructor has to buy into allowing their speech to be recorded and translated and all of that.
Well, because we're going through student accessibility services, there are supplementary services that do, like, not the same thing, but they already are recording their notes. They already are using like voice transcription and stuff like that. So it doesn't necessarily need buy-in from the professors, and we've taken care of that through going through student accessibility services. And so this would be something where we talk to student accessibility service advisors, and they then recommend the product as a supplementary service instead of the note taker to the students.
So your revenue model is basically $125 a course a student, and that is going to come from the BSWD, is that correct? Have you validated that? Have you engaged that agency on your?
No, we haven't engaged with the students in particular, but we are running a focus group in the next 30 days to see where they see value in the product and what features they want. But just gathering information from different student accessibility services, the highest that some centers were paying was $250, and the lowest was $75, and others were just strictly volunteer-based. We do know that the BSWD is something where it's a pre-approval. So if a student wants to use Aida Note in 4 of their classes in the following semester, they submit how much Aida Note costs, and then the government dispenses how much it's going to be for them to pay for it.
Okay, and then you supply the mics, the hardware, or who supplies that?
Accessibility services will have access to some microphones, but we've been speaking with our mentor recently about the need to possibly have microphones. So we're considering purchasing and selling microphones initially, but initially when we start the first campaigns, we'll be giving the microphones to the professors and to the accessibility services, so it gains traction.
With your early customer identification, your first few slides, you dealt with individuals in their first sort of educational experience. How do you see your work that you're doing at the university level percolating back down into early stage education?
It's definitely something that we've considered, and built the platform in such a way that this could actually be used in a lot of general cases. It could be used in conferences and the private sector. And so we would like to get into, district school boards, but again, the issue was that getting into them would take a long time. So this is the initial proof of concept, and if we can prove that this works at one university, then we can prove that it works at all of them. So the idea is to build it in such a way that it is transferable to different sectors, while validating it with what we're given.
The reason we chose to use the session tokens as well. So if we want, we can change our cost structure. It could be a pay-per-use service if it needs to be, if we find a need for that in the market as well. So you can use a session token to begin on any type of presentation like this, and then have access to that session token for access to your conversation and your log afterwards, and also for the real-time updates during the presentation.
When you looked at the market potential and the number of students that it could potentially impact, what's to stop one student in the class from sharing their notes with the other students?
Yeah.
To prevent that?
What we're trying not to do is to limit how much information we can share. So some of the things that we're trying to keep in mind is that this is an accessibility-focused application. So having things that are exportable to PDF, that are able to be read by e-readers and different tools that the student might use is something that we're more focused on than the information sharing. Like, I don't think that we can really do much about stopping different students from, sharing the information once it's in text form. but we're hoping that they find value in the note-taking features and having that all in a consolidated place where you would be, you know, one person on at the same time, like at once.
Yeah, we would assume that people would have enough interest in the highlights and the annotations on the actual note pages themselves that they would find inherent value in that and want to purchase the product so they have those features for themselves.
Okay. What do you still need in order to get this product to markets? I know you're running your focus group, but what comes after that, and how much more time do you need before you think that students are able to start using your product?
We actually plan to do a soft launch with Student Accessibility Services in January. We plan to validate our features within the next 30 days so that we can develop them over the month of December and do a soft launch in January so that we can just work out all of the kinks and the bugs, because we believe that launching in fall of 2019 with a fresh school year will give us the opportunity to market over the summer and then come out very strong in the fall as a whole school year type deal. So what we need right now is, so we have 2 software developers working on the project. We'd like to add another one who can focus on note-taking features. And then we'd also need funds for marketing itself, because we plan to go to different universities at open houses and promoting the product there so that we can get it into the hands of the students in the fall.
From a software development standpoint, to go from alpha to beta, we need approximately a month and a half of development time, and that's to have all the features that we're thinking of right now, but that could change slightly depending on our focus group and how that session goes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.